Testing, one, two, testing.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Distinguished professors, guests, esteemed colleagues of Ahaskar KHS, we are now ready to commence our closing ceremony, inshallah. I would like to kindly remind all the members to register your attendance by scanning the QR code provided. We also request everyone to place your mobile phones and electronic devices on silent mode to ensure the session proceeds without interruption. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Distinguished guests, esteemed professors, ladies and gentlemen, with great respect, we acknowledge the presence of our VIPs and distinguished guests who have just entered the hall. Honorable Professor Dr. Muhammad Al-Tahir Al-Misawi, Professor at the Department of Fiqh and Usul al-Fiqh, and today's keynote speaker. And our Congress Chairperson, Dr. Rabiatul Adawiya bint Muhammad Saleh, Head of Research, Responsible Research and Innovation at the Kulliya of Ahaskar KHS. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite all of you to kindly rise and let's sing together the national anthem Nagaraku and the IIUM anthem leading the way.
Let's lead the way, light in the future, share the wisdom to the spirit of Islam. Revelation and reason shall excel, shall prevail. Merging faith and knowledge, we the Khalifa, we will fulfill the amanah. Together we make the world a better place. Forever expand the culture of Iqra. IUM is to realize our meaning of Ramadan bil Alameen. Together we make the world a better place. Forever expand the culture of Iqra. IUM is to realize the meaning of mercy to
You may now be seated. Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi alladhi bi ni'matihi tatimmu salihat wa bi fadlihi tazdadu ta'at wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin khairil bariyat wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Honorable Professor Dr. Muhammad Al-Tahir Al-Mizawi, Professor at the Department of Fiqh and Usul al-Fiqh, and today's keynote speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Tunku Maha bin Tunku Muhammad Mukhtar, Deputy Dean of Postgraduate Responsible Research and Innovation, Hasker KHS, Dr. Rabiatul Adawiya bint Muhammad Saleh, Head of Responsible Research and Innovation, Chairperson of the Ahaskar KHS Tawhidic Epistemology Congress 2025. Respected deans, deputy deans, professors, directors, deputy directors, senior deputy director, members of the Kulliya, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you as we gather for the closing ceremony of the Tawhidic Epistemology Congress 2025. Over the past 5 days, this Congress has been a landmark academic journey, uniting scholars across diverse disciplines to explore, critically examine, and advance the vision of Tawhidic epistemology as not only a catalyst for the integration of knowledge, but also an intellectual compass and a beacon of guidance for ethics, scholarship, and civilizational renewal. Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, to seek blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let us all participate in the dua recitation led by Associate Professor Dr. Shahid Abdullah Busari from the Department of Fiqh and Usulul Fiqh and the Coordinator of Islamization of Knowledge at the Kulliya.
السلام عليكم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم أحسن عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة. اللهم بارك لنا في بكورنا وأوصالنا وبارك لنا في غدونا وعشيتنا وبارك يا حميد في صبائنا ومسائنا وبارك يا مجيد في ديننا ودنيانا. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا كلها وارحمنا وعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتنا. اللهم زدنا في الخير ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا في العالمين ولا تهنا وآتنا من رحمتك ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا بين عبادك ولا تؤثر علينا وأردنا في الصالحين وأرد عنا ونجنا من البلايا واستر عيوبنا. وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ameen. Taqabbal Allah minna wa minkum ajma'in. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Shahid, for the dua. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, our closing keynote speaker is a scholar who needs a little introduction within IIM and the wider academic community. Professor Ilmisawi is an internationally recognized for his profound contributions to Islamic thought, civilization, and intellectual history, with decades of scholarship that bridge tradition and contemporary challenges. His works have inspired both students and fellow academics, advancing our understanding of the Islamic worldview and Tawhidic epistemology as guiding frameworks for knowledge, ethics, and civilization. It is therefore a great honor and privilege to invite Professor Ilmisawi to deliver the closing keynote speaker entitled From Islamic Worldview to Tawhidic Epistemology, Genesis, Development, and Implications of a Crucial Concept. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Muhammad Tahir Al-Misawi.
I have to repeat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And a very good morning to all of you. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله محمد النبي المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I don't know how to start. It's really quite challenging for me to be put in this position. But it is also a honor to me. I feel very much dignified to share some thoughts at the conclusion of this very important program that has been going on for the last 4 days. And of course, for me, it is a process of learning. So I don't have to claim that I am going to teach you anything you don't know. Suffice it to just tell you that what I really intended to do is to have a journey with you to see whether what we are talking about under this very big name, Tawhidic epistemology, is an invention or it has a history. Because from some encounters and discussions with some friends and colleagues, I realized some kind of astonishment. Sometimes terms cause shocks. Names can cause certain kind of apprehension. But when we know the name, when we realize that what we are talking about has been progressing over time, but only from period to period, they are given certain new nomenclature or a different way of expression. And history for me is very important, and actually for everyone, because one who doesn't have a history is very difficult, if not impossible, to have a future. Suffices to mention that the Quran itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who sent down the Quran, which is His word, didn't say to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam and to those who were around him that what was revealed to him is something totally new. He referred them many times, we find that in the Quran, to the previous chain of revelations, to the previous chain of wisdom. And this is very important. It gives us a very important lesson that history needs to be always invoked, studied, examined, so that we can learn what can be useful from previous happenings and what should be averted so that we don't fall in the same holes or pitfalls that our predecessors fell into. So that's why if I go to my slides, and it's a little bit funny way of doing slides because I never used them before. So it has been challenging to me to do that. So I try to be creative in a funny way, as you can see. Yeah, can we, so that's the title. Tawhidic epistemology, genesis, development, etc. So which refers us to history. So we start with that's just an introduction. No. I have to press it? Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, so it's okay. Okay, so I have to manage everything myself. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Yeah, that's why I told you this is first time I do PowerPoint, what you call. Okay. Formulating the Islamic worldview versus modern secular, etc. conceptions of the world. Muslims in the 19th century at least came into encounter with a rising civilization. And this rising civilization was not only military, was not only by force. Most important was its science, its technology, its philosophies, its theories. And many prominent thinkers and minds who were living that situation realized the implications, not just of the military aspect, which enabled the colonizers to occupy the lands, but most importantly, the other weapons to occupy the minds. Okay. Okay. Here, we see what I call the forerunners or initiators, those who first expressed and came into encounter and engaged with the Western civilization at its intellectual level, at its very fundamental philosophical level. As you will realize, every time there is a title like that, I put etc. Yeah, of course, I have mentioned a few of them, etc., meaning that there are actually other scholars, other thinkers who made their contribution in the context which concerns us here. So this is not exhaustive nor exclusive, meaning that it's difficult, of course, for me to just go and cite and present about all of them. So I'm just giving samples. Here we have 4. We have Afghani, we have Abdu, his disciple, we have Sheikh Mustafa Sabri, and we have Muhammad Iqbal. All of them were born in the 19th century. And some of them, of course, their life extended, like Mustafa Sabri. I think he passed away after all of them, although he is older, for example, than Iqbal. Sheikh Mustafa Sabri, for those who may not have come across his name before, was the last sheikh of the Ottoman Caliphate. And he spent the last part of his his life in Cairo, in Egypt, like many others who also moved there. So these 4 engaged directly with the philosophical worldview that was being propagated through different venues in the Muslim world, through universities, through schools, through whatever institutions that were operational in the Muslim world and the colonial regime. And therefore, Afghani, who was the first to write a short epistle, which is known as Al-Radd al-Dahriyin, or the refutation of the naturalists, الطبائعيين. He was actually not just discussing and refuting the materialistic worldview and assumptions that were based on modern science. He actually took the matter to its very remote roots, to the Greek period. And he was mentioning about the early materialist philosophers, and that the modern scientific spirit that dominated in the West, especially through the positivist paradigm that was developed and formulated by Auguste Comte and then followed by others, that the world we live in is just this physical world, and that science, as understood as natural science, is actually going to replace any other framework or authoritative idea to explain the world. If you go to Auguste Comte's multifarious works, especially his course on positivist philosophy, and he's also considered as the father of sociology, he will tell you that humanity has passed through few stages, 3 stages in the main, and now we have reached the final stage in the development and evolution of the human mind and human civilization, and science is the new religion, and he called it the religion of humanity. And therefore, we don't need any other framework, whether it is the church, whether it is the Bible, whether it is the gospel, whether it is the Quran. All these are actually no more relevant, and therefore, the authority, the ultimate framework on which we should rely to explain ourselves, to understand ourselves, to conduct our behavior, to regulate our relations, to explain the world around us, is science understood in its natural science framework. And the same thing was repeated time and again by many people, but I'm most interested in someone with whom Al-Afghani and Abdu had intellectual engagement, namely Ernest Renan, the French historian, philosopher, thinker, who singled out Islam and the Muslim mind as actually something primitive and that is of no use and no benefit for the modern age. And of course, he would he'll tell you about now science represents the maturity of humankind. So everything else should be left behind, should be forgotten. So Afghani was responding to this in his الرد على الدهريين. Of course, the Dahriyun, immediate Dahriyun, which were in his mind, were actually a special school that rose in the 19th century, especially in Muslim India. Sayyid Ahmad Khan and others, who propagated the idea of science being the ultimate. Of course, they were just emulating what the British, as the imperial empire of the time, was teaching to its colonies, to its colonized people. And therefore, Afghani was addressing this immediate audience and behind them addressing their masters. That's why he took the matter throughout history to the ancient Greeks. Abdu, who also had encounters with Renan and with someone else by the name of Hanunu, I think, or Hanulu, something like that. I cannot remember the exact name. Wrote his epistle, Risalt al-Tawheed, to give a new formulation to what used to be discussed and studied in the field of Ilm al-Kalam, of course, and the corner of Ilm al-Kalam as a discipline is talking about God, talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the ultimate source of existence, as the absolute being, and as the giver of life, and as the sustainer of the world. So Abdu was trying to express the theme of Tawheed that we find usually in many books like Al-Mawaqif of Al-Jarjani, or the whatever Al-Shamil of Al-Juwayni, or whatever book of Ilm Kalam, Al-Matalib Al-Aliya of Al-Razi, etc. So he was trying to bring the gist of Islamic theology and show how it bears on our modern cultural, social, and civilizational concerns, and how it can reshape the Muslim mind, or at least provide the Muslim mind with the means to stand for and resist the intellectual onslaught that modern civilization was carrying on. Actually, the colonizers were not just interested just in occupying the land, in exploiting the resources of the colonized, but most important, how to perpetuate the dependency relationship of the colonized people to the colonial masters. And this cannot be achieved only through administrative or military dominance. Most important, how after the tanks go out, after the military bases are closed, how we can keep these people depending on us. And this has to do with the occupation of the mind, those most important. So Abdu was aware, expressed the consciousness of this. And most importantly, he discussed the traditional themes, classical themes we find in Ilm al-Kalam, الذات, الصفات, etc. And of course, the difference between the different schools, Asha'ira, Mu'tazila, Maturidiyya. But most important for him after that, after trying to come to a kind of reconciliation, or at least to take position on this, Abdu was most important, how the belief in the oneness of God as the ultimate source of being, as the absolute being, how this can be reflected in our thinking, how we can think according to what we believe, not just believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one and there is no one similar to him, ليس كمثله شيء. But most important, what are the implications that this belief will have for us at the intellectual level, the way we think, and at the practical level, how we act, the way we do. So that's very important. And I think because this was out of realization that the worldview that was propagated, whether in the name of science, whether in the name of progress, whether in the name of reason, rationality, had its implications. Of course, you remember the different scientific theories. Most important and most pervasive of them was the evolution theory of Darwin, and it has to do with the way we look at human beings, the way we look at the kinds of different existence and the relationship between man and other existence, etc. And most important, the way we look to the relationship between creation and creator. Because the modern world, the modern scientific world of view and philosophical world of view, I'm talking about the dominant paradigms. I'm not talking, because there are views, there are theories, there are thinkers who actually revolted or at least expressed their reservations with regard to these paradigms. But the dominant paradigms, if I borrow the Foucauldian expression, the dominant episteme, النظام المعرفي السائد, was to detach the world, and most importantly, human beings as individuals and society, from the beyond, from the absolute. And everything is here, the here and now, as being mentioned by some philosophers. So Abdu was trying to bring to the consciousness of the Muslims that it's not just sufficient to believe that Allah is one, that God is one, and that He is perfect, and that He is the creator, but most important, what are the repercussions or the implications of this belief in your mental framework, in the way you think, in the way you view things. This is what Abdu was trying to, so to bring the, that's why I said it's trying to formulate the Islamic worldview, although he did not use this term. And none of them actually used this term. It is very recently that in Muslim intellectual circles, people start using these terms. So what I'm trying to say is that actually this consciousness was there, this realization was there. And that's why they were trying to give a new formulation to Ilm al-Kalam that goes beyond just reproducing what earlier scholars in the different theological schools were doing. Sheikh Mustafa Sabri is a huge book, 4-volume book. But interestingly, he realized that, yeah, people maybe were a little bit lazy to read such a voluminous book. So he actually did another version, which is only 1 volume, about 200 or 250 pages. So this is about 1,000 pages. And the most important, he was, as you can see the title, موقف العقل والدين والعقل والعلم والدين من رب العالمين. And he developed here a whole theory where he tried to use the evidence, rational evidence based on reason, on intellectualism or intellection, as Prophet Attas would say, and or speculation, as others would like to say. The evidence of science, the modern science, the evidence it brings, and of course the arguments of Deen itself, and here he refers to Islam, to bring to the center of intellectual interest that God is there, and without Him we cannot have the world, we cannot have the existence, we cannot. So this is a very important idea, because the Western theories, whether in the name of science or philosophy, many of them actually what actually I will use the term that used by some writers, they chased God out. And you remember the very famous expression of Nietzsche when he said that God is dead. Actually, the issue is that we people will started running away from God, trying to alienate ourselves from God in the name of other gods or other deities. So Sheikh Mustafa Sabri was trying to tell us, whatever we do, we propagate in the name of science, etc., is actually can be disproven and rebutted by the ilm, science, by reason, and by religion. Because religion, especially as far as the Islam is concerned, the Quran is not just about believing. The Quran is a discursive discourse. Does not only prescribe, do this, don't do that. The Quran does not only describe, or the sun. The Quran actually argues, is full of arguments, is full of disputation, hijaj, argumentation. And therefore, Sheikh Mustafa Sabri was trying to tell Muslims, actually, it's not just you bring, okay, science says this. The Quran teaches us how to argue, how to think, how to use evidence, how to rebut falsehood. So this is very important for Sheikh Mustafa Sabri. And here comes the connection, that there is no actually alienation between religion as revealed in the Quran, between science as we discover its facts and realities out in the world around us or in ourselves, because science is not only about the external phenomena there, it is also about human beings. Human beings are themselves subject of scientific inquiry. So Sheikh Mustafa Sabri was trying to highlight the issue of unity between these things. There is no alienation. In the West, at some time, there is alienation. Science is anti-religion, religion is anti-science, reason is anti-I don't know, etc., etc. So Sheikh Mustafa Sabri was trying to make this important proposition that in an Islamic framework of an outlook, there is no disconnection between. They complement. They are interconnected, and therefore you cannot rely on one and leave behind the others. That's the most important thing. Sheikh Iqbal, all you know him, and I am very interested in his concept of reality. In one of his lectures, which form this book, there is one, I think the second or the third lecture, because he talks about the religious experience, etc. One of his concept of reality, and that reality is all inclusive, encompassing the seen and the unseen, and that the core or the maintainer or I cannot find the proper word, that deity or God is actually the one without whom we cannot think about reality. So reality is multidimensional. It can be relative, concrete, immediate, but also it is absolute. And perhaps because of the ideas he expressed in this book, especially in this chapter, some people accused Iqbal or criticizing him of being an immantanist, meaning that some kind of wahdatul wujud. But he is actually far from that, because he wanted to say, in a nutshell, that everything, every existent in this world, whether seen or unseen, whether concrete or mental, depends on in its existence on God. So because he is the ultimate source of existence. He is absolute being, and therefore he is the giver of existence. الذي يخرج الأشياء من العدم بأمره. So that's, and this, of course, it was a response to the modern scientific philosophy or romantic or scientific worldview that tried to see that all we are concerned about and all that exists is that which is the physical world. Of course, it can extend to the stars and to the different kinds of kawakib, etc. But most important, the quantifiable that can come under our either observation or experimentation, or we can extrapolate to it through our mental demonstrations, mathematical equations, etc. But most important is still within the compass of our reason, of our mental faculties. So Iqbal was responding to this kind of philosophy or outlook. Here, I am moving to what I call the followers, the inheritors, and the developers. So there is a chain. These people who are mentioned here, the two Qutb actually, I mean the Sayyid Qutb, who died in '66, and Muhammad Qutb, who died in 2014, and Maududi. And perhaps the way I have tried to put the sequence, I took into consideration not whether he is older or lived after, but the issue when they wrote. So Qutb, the two Qutbs and Maududi were mainly writing during the 30s, the 40s, and 50s, and of course, perhaps up to the 60s. Sayyid Qutb wrote two important books, and very crucial. Of course, and not all of them were published during his lifetime. خصائص التصور الإسلامي ومقوماته, but actually it contains only the خصائص, and the other one is مقومات التصور الإسلامي, which was posthumously published many years after he passed away. Here we can see a clear formulation about what we now call worldview. In the two books, he talks about God as, of course, the ultimate source. He talks about the idea of shumul, of holism, that we need a holistic worldview, a holistic outlook, and that the Quran provides this kind of. He talks about the position of man, the human beings, what is their position, what is their mission, what is their function, and the human beings are not just a sum of matter and that's all, but because they have received the takreem or the dignification or honoring by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who positioned them as the vicegerents or the trustees, the Khalifa. And he talks about adl, and balance, tawazun, that the world around us and also ourselves as human beings, we are actually created بقدر, with balance. إن كل شيء خلقناه بقدر. So there is nothing coming by chance, coming by, nothing is out of proportion. And that Islam actually has come to maintain and promote this kind of balance, this kind of holistic view and holistic approach to life at the individual level, to life at the collective social level, and also in our vision of the world, of the universe, of the cosmos. So that's in just a few words what Sayyid Qutb message was in these two books. Of course, if you read his Dilal, you will find actually a lot of details, a lot of about a lot of, I cannot find the word. Yeah, can you help me the word? Anyway, maybe it will come on its own. So, Sayyid Qutb, that was his message. And I can see that he was actually extrapolating, developing, building on what people like Sabri, like Afghani, like Ablu did. So he was not just coming from nowhere. He has behind him a very important tradition. And of course, this tradition, we can go and take it back as far as Al-Ash'ari and Al-Allaf and Wasil ibn Ata and others. It's not just something. But the most important that the formulation, the expression of these things in order to respond to the modern challenges of the different kinds of currents of thought. So that's Qutb. The second Qutb, Muhammad Qutb, alayhi rahmatullah, wrote two important books, both in the 40s and 50s. This one, Al-Insan Bayna Al-Maddiya wal-Islam, and Al-Tatawwur wal-Thabat fi Hayat al-Bashar. And in these two books, he was specifically responding to two main currents of thought. He was responding to evolution theory in its different manifestations, because the evolutionary theory did not just stop at the physical, biological level as explained by Darwin, but it had its ramifications in the social sciences. That's why we came to know something like social Darwinism, which was mainly propagated and developed by Herbert Spencer, who was a leading sociologist from Germany. So that everything, and of course, it was given more actually impetus by the Marxist theories of dialectical materialism and historical materialism, and there is always a kind of unceasing evolution, and there is nothing actually that is constant or stable in human existence, whether at the level of biological level, as Darwin said, of course. Luckily, he just stopped at that, okay, because he said he did not expect that we can go beyond the human level, but in the end, he attached us gracefully, in, to our early immediate ancestor. Who is our immediate ancestor, according to Darwin? It's the chimpanzee. It's the chimpanzee. If you look at any book on biology and evolution, and you will find the chain of the different, what you call, creations from the worm or the amorphous material matter that has no shape, no shackle, up to then we find, you look behind, you find behind yourself immediately a chimpanzee. So, but now the issue, people are talking about the post-human. So Darwin will be crying. Darwin will be sad, because Darwin said, okay, alhamdulillah, we are the ultimate and the culmination of the biological evolution of the world. But now people are talking about the post-human. How is it going to look like? No one knows. So we have to ask the late day prophets who are telling us about the post-human. Of course, if you go, there are so many books about the post-human future, and I think it was perhaps Fukuyama who first used the issue of post-human future. But no, it's not just a post-human future. Now they are talking about post-human beings. Post-human beings. So Sheikh Muhammad Qutb was responding to this issue, this challenge, that there are constants in human creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings with such characteristics, with such constitution, that is not going to be swept away and changing incessantly. No, there is. But also there are dimensions, there are aspects for human life, for human beings to evolve. Evolve mentally, evolve culturally, evolve socially, adapt, because human beings are both able to adapt themselves to the environment and to adapt the environment to themselves. And this is the most important equation. Human beings are not just existence that adapt to whatever is there. They have the capacity to adapt whatever is there to themselves, because they have the capacity of thinking, of visualizing, of constructing, of making a bee or the ants or a bird over hundreds of years, they will be making their nest in the same way. But human beings have been evolving in this sense. So we cannot deny that there is evolution. They evolve, they develop, they change, they transform their environment, their institutions, they invent. But of course, they don't invent from thin air. They use what has been given to them by their creator. The environment in which they live, the earth on which they sustain themselves, is as Farouqi says, the material from which they use, they make, from which they extract, from which they develop, from which they manufacture different things. And of course, beyond that, their institutions, their kinds of economic transactions, they develop multiplicity, endless. They have the capacity. And this is because they are equipped with what Shah Waliullah, the great mind, called man in opposition or in contrast to the other creation on earth, is endowed with what he calls universal vision. Al-aql al-kulli, or al-ra'y al-kulli. He mentioned this in his book, Hujjatullah al-Baligha. So human beings, and this goes back to the first stage when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the names. And of course, names here, just not giving him a list of things. This is a table, this is a bottle, this is a chair. But as many scholars say, the conceptual power of reasoning, conceptualize things. Because when you gave something a name, it means you have been able to understand that thing and identify and make it distinct or see what differentiates it from other things. So this is what Sheikh Shah Waliullah was talking about as al-ra'y al-kulli. And the ra'y al-kulli makes human beings different, not just in degree from other existence in the world, but in kind. Human beings, their nature, human nature, makes them different in kind, not in degree. That's why we don't belong to, according to this view, we don't belong to the family of the apes. And there is a very interesting guy, philosopher and physiologist from UK by the name of Raymond Tallis. He wrote a very important book. Although he doesn't believe in God, but his reflections, his scientific expertise has led him to come to the idea that it is nonsensical what Darwin and his school and its ramifications have done in a very important book called Aping Mankind. Aping Mankind. Aping Mankind, reducing mankind to the apes. Aping from the ape, the qird. I tried to translate this in Arabic, but I could not find a better thing that saying qardanatul insan. Qardanatul al-insan. So the aping. So that's the issue. Human beings, therefore, in the what Sheikh Muhammad Qutb was trying to say, to counter this kind of thing and bring the Islamic vision of the other one is about al-maddiya, insan bayn al-maddiya wal-Islam. Human beings are not just material animals or economic animals or homo economicus as theorists in economics would say, but human beings are multidimensional. They have mind, they have reason, they have emotions, they have intellect. They are biological. We human beings are embedded in the world of nature, in this. And we cannot survive and live without depending on what has been given to us in this world. So we are duty bound, we are naturally bound, or by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sustain our life, to flourish, to blossom in earth, on earth, not on the moon. That's why people who go to the moon, they have to take oxygen with them. Here, you don't have to take oxygen on your back so that you survive. So that's what important thing is, that this multidimensionality. And of course, some Western scholars, if I can mention the Herbert Marcuse, the German philosopher who belongs to the critical school, talked about the one-dimensional man. And this theme has been taken by different scholars. So Muhammad Qutb was actually trying to respond to this trend of reducing human beings to just the physical, biological, material side of them. But human beings are more than that. And of course, this is not just a matter believed by Muslims or understood by Muslims. We find other traditions, whether they're monotheistic traditions or other religious traditions, they also entertain the same view. But most important, because there arose in the midst of Muslim societies people who were propagating these ideas. And also he, in the same book, and actually even the first, he was also responding to certain psychological theories. Most eminent of them is the psychoanalytical school or theories of Freud, Sigmund Freud. and Freud as people who follow some psychological study know, ultimately he reduced all human drives to the sexual, the libido, the sexual thing. And of course, he has the other dark word, which he is called the subconscious. So Muhammad Qutb was trying to see how to respond to this and refute this kind of things. So this is what these two guys, and of course there is, if you can remember the, why it doesn't come out? I want to go back. Yeah. Maududi was very eloquent, and it's a very, just 50-page booklet or monograph where he brought in these four concepts, Allah, Deen, Ibadah, etc. And he tried to formulate this comprehensive worldview where Ibadah has to do with the relationship, with your relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deen as presenting a whole system, not system of belief, but a system of rules, of values, of to regulate your life, your relationships with yourself, with other fellow human beings, with God, etc., with the rest of existence, with the world, because Islam does not teach us only how to deal with each other or how to obey God in certain ritual way, but also it teaches us how to regulate our relationship with the world, with the creation, how to deal with them, how to not cause trouble, not cause distraction in the world. So this what Sheikh Maududi tried to say. All this, I can say that they are just preparations for the emergence of a more focused thinking on the issue of epistemology, of the theory of knowledge, because epistemology has to do actually with what has to do with knowledge. Turabi and Mutahhari, and I have been open to see all what the Muslim Ummah has produced. I did not differentiate between whether he is this or that, because all for me actually have worked to develop Islamic thought in response to the moral challenges. And Mutahhari, as you know, he was an Iranian. He was one of the prominent figures of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, and he was assassinated with others. And he has written a lot, and he is the first, to my knowledge, to have used a ru'yat tawhidiyya, the tawhidic worldview. I have not found anywhere in any other work someone who has used the term. Of course, the worldview was used in English. Vision du monde was used in French. And of course, Weltanschauung used in German. But using the term, translating this term perhaps in this way, Mutahhari, to my knowledge so far, was the first to use the term. And of course, Iran in the 50s, in the 60s, was actually very open to Western thought, and all different kinds of great scholars and philosophers were actually impacting a lot. And Mutahhari was responding, like other scholars from Qum and other learning institutions, to this wave of Westernization in his society. And many of his works develop one way or another this concept of worldview. So he is, to my mind, of course, I depend here on the translation. I don't know Persian. But the people who translated it from Persian, I guess and I trust they actually expressed what he actually used in Persian. Because actually, in many ways, many terms, they are not different. Because, as you know, Persian is composed of at least 80% of Arabic words. So it is quite certain that he used it. And he used it in opposition to what he called scientific worldview, which was propagated by the natural philosopher or the philosophers of natural sciences, the rational worldview, the philosophical worldviews. But all of this, at the end of analysis, their point of departure, their basis goes to reductionism, that whatever worldview we have is actually starts here in this world and stops there. That does not go beyond this world. So Sheikh Mutahhari was using this term, which will be later, of course, used by others. And I can say that immediately after him, and actually at the same time, Turabi wrote his wonderful book. And I invite everyone to read this book. Because to my sense, it influenced Faruqi in a very important manner. Turabi, in this book, which was first published in 1974, what I can say, he actually developed علم كلام جديد. By the way, the term علم كلام جديد is not new. It was used long time ago in India by Sheikh Nu'mani. Sheikh Nu'mani, he wrote a whole book by علم كلام جديد, and luckily it has been translated into Arabic. So what Turabi was doing and did in this book was actually to bring the conception of Iman, the conception that what Ilm al-Kalam previously talked about. He did not talk about the attributes of God, the existence of, but what was his most concern is how the Unitarian or Tawhidic ru'ya, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can impress, can impact, can shape our thinking. And of course, he talked about the idea of comprehensiveness. Not comprehensiveness just in the teachings of the Quran, but comprehensiveness and unity in life. Life is united. And as some people say, life does not disconnect, life unites. Your body as a human being, if there is a small pain, a small thing, trouble in your finger, you are not going, yeah, okay, do it your way. No, all your body, all your emotions, all your thinking will be affected one way or another. So it's not just the small thing that caused trouble in your finger will be suffering. All your body will be affected by this. And this is the unity of life. And sometimes you are physically very well. There is no physical trouble. You go to the doctor, there is no symptom of any kind of disease, no microbe attacking you, nothing. But certain things happening to your emotions, to your feelings, or to your thinking can affect your physical well-being. I give you a very interesting story. Sorry. Sheikh Rais Ibn Sina, of course, he was not just a theoretical what you call, uh, physician, but he was also practical physician. One day, a family brought to him their son. This boy, or this young man, was suffering, and he was getting weaker and weaker every day. They took him to many doctors around, and they could not cure him. They could not identify what was wrong, because they said, okay, there is nothing. So they gave him this, so he stopped eating, etc. So Sheikh Ibn Sina was told about all this, what happened, and how it happened, and they could not find any solution. So he told them, give me some time. He took the information about the guy, and he asked some people, some of his, say, mukhbirin, some of his intelligent agents, to gather information about this young man, who, okay, where his family are living, who is next there, the names of this, okay, whatever. So he got quite information of the voisinage, or the neighborhood of the guy. And then he came, not him, and does not have sophisticated machines, just using the pulses. So he was talking to him, mentioning this, mentioning that, mentioning. And at one time, he mentioned the name of a girl. And the guy exploded. The guy. So he told them, okay, this is the problem. This guy loves this girl. He wanted to marry her, but you didn't allow him to marry her. So the only cure is that he should be married to this girl and finish. So it was not, he's not had any physical trouble, but it was something emotional. Time. How much? Oh, ya Allah. Okay, so. Good ending. Yeah, good. I think this good ending, yeah, okay. Okay, so these are falsafatuna. He dealt with the theory of knowledge, with the vision of the world, actually, and of course it was written in the late 50s, in 1959. L'Usus al-Mustantiqiyya al-Istiraq was trying to produce a whole theory on what are the intellectual, scientific, demonstrative framework that underlies both the human physical sciences, the theological disciplines, etc. So you can read the books. Okay, that's important. Now you go and read these books, please. Okay, okay. Here, I will just one word or two about each. Okay, it stopped. No problem. Oh. What's happening? Okay. Here, I have this, again, comes with us again, Sadr with his two books. And here, this Iranian philosopher with two books. He was actually Mahdi Ha'iri Yazdi. He was one of the great philosophers in Iran. He was in close connection with Sayyid Hussein Nasr, and he produced these two important books. This one about what he calls the universal science. It means what has to do with God and what comes under God in terms of the unity of the universe, unity of the existence, the normative system of nature, etc. Here he came up with actually developing an earlier theory of knowledge, or doctrine of knowledge, from the Mullah Sadra, especially the great Iranian philosopher, who developed two major concepts, and actually these were lately used by some Western philosophers like Bernard Russell, the concept of knowledge by presence, al-ilm al-huduri, and the other one, knowledge by acquaintance. Al-ilm al-huduri, that which imposes itself on you by its very virtue, because it is part of your existence. It's internal you. Hudur, it means that you cannot doubt your existence. Of course, Descartes will express this in a different way. I think, therefore, I am, the cogito. But most important is it starts from the human beings. So once you doubt your existence, you are in trouble. So it means you cannot go anywhere. So it's, things are blocked. That's why it is said that what his name, the great Hakim, Socrates said that know thyself, you should know it. And this ilm huduri, you don't need to get demonstrations and proofs and evidence that you exist, because this is huduri. And of course, there are other processes related to that. There ilm husuli, by acquaintance, that which you get through different means, sense perception, from demonstration, from speculation, whatever you go. Here, I have two men. I have Muhammad Abul Qasim Haj Hamad. He is the first one to have used the term al-jama' bayna al-qira'atayn. This book, Al-Alami Al-Islamiyya Al-Thaniya, this was the first edition in 1980, and this was the second edition in 2 volumes, because he developed and extended a lot. And he wrote after that many other books, at least 2 books related to epistemology. One of them is here is منهجية القرآن المعرفية أسلمت فلسفة العلوم الطبيعية والاجتماعية. So he is the one who actually invented the term from reflections on the Quran, tadabbur on the Quran, that relating to Musa, to Ibrahim and others, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us 2 books in order to read. And we cannot just do with one without the other. If you want to have a balanced and comprehensive understanding and course of action, you need to have the 2 kinds of knowledge integrated, not just stored in different, softwares. Your software here has to put them together, look to things using both. Then As-Sunan Baqir al-Sadr al-Madrasa al-Qur'aniyya, he was the first to use it with regard to Quran. المنهج التوحيدي or المنهج الموضوعي تفسير, and he applied it to Quran, how to deal with the Quran, not just in piecemeal atomistic way as usually done in the books of tafsir, but how, if you want to understand a theme or a subject, how we should examine all the relevant Quranic material in order to come up with a comprehensive picture or view of that. And it's not only that, we have to relate this Quranic understanding to the reality. That he said that al-manhaj al-tawhidi, or the Tawhidic methodology, has to unite not only the Quran itself, looking at it as in a thematic way, but also relating to the word. منهج يوحد بين المثال وبين الواقع، بين المفهوم وبين الحاصل في الواقع. Then here we have Turabi also dealt a lot in the early 80s, in his book, late 70s, early 80s, Manhaj al-Tawhidi, and he is the one of those who used al-Manhajiyya al-Tawhidiyya. Before that, I cannot say that there is someone who used it, al-Manhajiyya al-Tawhidiyya. Of course, his immediate field was in the issue of theology, of jurisprudence, etc. But it has implications, as he mentioned in his book Al-Iman, that has to do with reality of the world, because the Quran has come not just to instruct us mentally, but it also has to instruct us on the ground, how to deal with things. And he used the term تنزيل المعاني على الوقائع, how to translate or apply the meanings or the concepts to the reality. Here, of course, he wrote something related to that in his Tafsir al-Tawhidi. Here we have Sheikh Islamiyat al-Ma'rifa, or one of his sheikhs, Faruqi, in his book of Tawheed, and actually is a very important book. Why? Because he provided what we can say a Tawheedic system. Tawheed is not just at the level of belief, but it is a level of society, of behavior, of thinking, of knowledge, and then he developed that further in his book, Islamization of Knowledge and the Work Plan, etc. Then we have Sheikh Taha Jabir. Actually, he borrowed the term al-Jam' bayn al-qira'atayn from Haj Hamad, and he added his insights and developed his insights. He also tried to revise the research program suggested by Al-Faruqi, and he came up with this, what he called the Al-Mahawir Al-Khamsa li Islamiyat Al-Ma'rifa, which all are united within the Islamic framework of Tawheed. Here we have our rector, Professor Othman Bakr. The first book, Classification of Knowledge, was actually his thesis, PhD thesis under the supervision of Sayyid Hussein Nasr. And he dealt there with three scholars on the classification of knowledge: Qutbuddin al-Shirazi, al-Ghazali, and Al-Farabi. And his theory, which was, he explained the other day here about the unity of knowledge, the hierarchy of disciplines, etc., is actually derived immediately from Al-Farabi, because Al-Farabi was the one who developed this framework. But then he did not stop there. He wrote a number of good works, good papers, and different sciences to get a number of disciplines. Of course, he has bias to scientific, physical sciences because of his training. He comes from physics, etc., and mathematics, so he is more inclined to that. But also he deals with other disciplines like psychology, because psychology is very much related to biology and to the physical constitution of man. And lastly, okay, I will stop just here because I have Mas'ud al-Alam Shudari. Actually, he is perhaps the most person who is propagating the term Tawheed. He does not say Tawheedic, but he's Tawheedi. He's talking about Tawheedi. At least he has 4 books. He's an economist by training, but he is very much interested in philosophy. And that's why he, over the last 20 years or a little bit more, he has produced at least 4 books related to this. And most important aspect of this, that when he brought in the idea of multidisciplinary studies, because the Tawheedic methodology, Tawheedic epistemology tells you that different disciplines are not isolated from each other, they are interconnected. And if you want to understand a phenomenon, you need to have this multidisciplinary approach in order to understand it properly. And here we have someone from physics, Professor Ahmed Fuad Basha. He is interested in the philosophy of science, and he also talking about the epistemologic tawhidi in his own way. I hope I have not been burdening you with nonsense. I hope at least if I have failed in everything, I wish I have not failed to bring to your attention some important thinkers and works that you need to explore for yourselves, and don't just take what I have said as the last thing. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Yeah, Prof. Yes, yes. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Al-Misawi, for that truly wonderful and deeply informative keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Al-Misawi has reminded us that Tawhidic epistemology is deeply rooted in the broader Islamic worldview, a worldview that stands in contrast to secular and materialistic perspectives. He traced its intellectual development from early reformers such as Jamaluddin al-Afghani, Muhammad Abdu, and Allama Iqbal, as well as prominent defenders of faith such as Sheikh Mustafa Sabri Effendi. Prof. Al-Misawi then highlighted how this intellectual legacy was carried forward by figures like Sayyid Qutb, Abul A'la al-Mawdudi, and enriched further by contemporary scholars including Ismail al-Razi al-Faruqi, Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, Murtada Mutahari, Hassan al-Turabi, Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Attas, and now Professor Professor Emerita Dr. Usman Bakar, and Masood al-Alam Chowdhury, and Basha. Professor Al-Misawi stressed that it is not sufficient to merely affirm that God is one, all-powerful and sovereign. Rather, this belief must be reflected in the way we think, study, innovate, and engage with the world. He also reminded us that the Quran is not simply a book of instruction that says do this and avoid that. It is also a book of arguments, reasoning, and reflection, inviting believers to think critically, to question, and to draw lessons that guide both knowledge and civilization. Prophet Misawi further emphasized that the Islamic monotheistic worldview affirms God as the absolute, highlights the unity of creation and divine law, balances constancy and change, unites the seen and unseen realities, and entrusts humanity with the role of trusteeship and vicegerency. Ladies and gentlemen, building on this foundation, Tawhidic epistemology emerges as an alternative epistemic framework, one that integrates revelation and reason and serves as a guiding methodology for knowledge, ethics, and civilization. Once again, thank you very much to Professor Al-Misawi for this wonderful keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now pleased to open the floor for questions and reflections. If you would like to contribute, kindly raise your hand. Yes, Professor Dr. Bahar, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to say a few words as well as asking a few questions. Now, first of all, we should realize too that before we have Afghani, there's a figure in the Malay world, Abdullah Mushi, who has already called for modernization and how Islam should give attention to modernization. That was in 1840, which means earlier than Abdul, and earlier than Afghani was an contemporary to Afghani probably. So his name is Abdul Munshi. He wrote many books, and he talked about science. He said the importance of science. He said how Muslims should follow science. Now, number two, I think we develop from the reality of consciousness to the reality of the bodily form. We talk about consciousness for a long time throughout the world. All religions talk about the human consciousness rather than human body. Until we fall so far and so deep, until we reach Darwin, and Darwin talked about the bodily form of man, how the evolution, and not the evolution of consciousness. While many Eastern traditions were talking about human consciousness. Now, once we reach the rock bottom of human reality to his bodily form or idea, then everyone talk about the bodily form in medicine, in security, in military. The bodily form became so important that the epistemology took a different turn from the human consciousness to the human bodily reality. Now, this is very, very dangerous because actually we do not know our body. Like I don't know how many inches is my nose and my fingers. And even if I know my finger is 3 inches, I don't measure it every day. So because it is less important, unless we become sick, there's something else. There's still the element of consciousness in sickness, in human, as what you say, Ibn Sina just now about. I think then what is important now is to return back to what is called as the human consciousness rather than human bodily form. And in Tawhidic, I don't know it's Arabic or English, Tawhidic, in Tawhidic approach, then we should focus more on human consciousness and not to follow, because that belongs to our tradition. The human consciousness is development. Now, when it comes to, when you were talking about the theory of evolution earlier on, and of course we should remember like Titus Bukat, Ibrahim Titus Bukat, who criticized the Darwinian theory, which is very false. It doesn't make sense. You know, how can we jump from chimpanzee to human being? There must be a missing link, and he said there are some missing links, not just one link, but there are many links, missing links in the evolutionary theory. So it's a false theory actually. And what I'm trying to say that we have to return back to human consciousness rather than the human bodily reality. Because human bodily reality is also human consciousness. Without consciousness, we cannot realize about the bodily reality of ourselves. So thank you that much for that. Thank you, Dr. Musavi, for such a wonderful lecture.
Okay, thank you, Professor Dattu. Prof, you, I think, yes, Prof. Okay. Or we take. Okay, I think we take another question from Dr. Umar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to make a question. Yeah, I thank Professor Tahir for your thought-provoking talk, keynote address, yes. It's mind refreshment, yes. Reminded me of this question, almost I forget, the rise of Islam. The rise of Islam. Okay, since I was undergraduate, we learned that there's illustrious names, Afghani, Muhammad Abdul, yes. During the time, they called for reform of Muslim societies. They called for modernization of Muslim societies. That's 120 years before. Okay, let's look at this within this 120 years of years. What happened to the world, non-Muslim world, besides the Muslim world? We saw the rise of Japan, which was destroyed, ruined, totally ruined after Second World War, but re-rise within 20 years with the economic power challenge America, equals to America, right? Japan. After Japan, we saw the rise of South Korea. We saw the rise of Taiwan. We saw rise one by one, the Indian, China, and now this Vietnam, yes. Yeah. But I did not see the rise of, major rise of Muslim world, no one. I did not. So I wonder, how long we have to wait. We talk about this rise of Islam, and talk about this reform of Islam, and understand Islam. Then we can see the rise of Islam again, like Abbasid dynasty. Huh? Yes. It's most likely in my lifetime, I cannot see the rise of Islam. I'm very sorry, yes. Maybe I'm too, yes. No, any Muslim country, anyone Muslim country can be enlisted into the developed country, inshallah, in near future, within 20 years, maybe 30 years, maximum 50 years, within my next generation, but not within another 100 years.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very
Thank you, Dr. Umar. May we take another question from Professor Ghalia, please?
الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you very much, our dear Professor Tahar Misawi, for your wonderful presentation. I want to represent myself. I am lecturer in Department of Fiqh and Usul Fiqh, and I was involved in teaching Islamization of knowledge for many years. And really I appreciate the effort that our university is doing to activate Islamization of knowledge by activating the Tawheed as a main pillar in the Islamization of knowledge process. This number one. Number two, I have a comment it's about the presentation that we have really learned a lot from it. I think the works from our scholars involve of reform based on the Tawheed started in our beloved professor presentation by Jamaluddin Afghani. So I have I want to bring or to add something. Before Afghani, we have to know that there are many important works done by our scholars. Not only the scholars that are related to Tawheed and Aqidah, but also the other scholars who we can find the Islamization of knowledge or the integration of knowledge can be taught or can be understood more from their works. I give examples, let's say Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, really he's very important scholar that we have to refer to his works, to his books, and to know how he used the Tawheed as a pillar in his work, especially in his book Radd al-Mantiqiyin, let's say, or in other works like Kitabu fil Fatawa and other works also. Also I mention Ibn Khaldun. Also I mention Shatibi. Shatibi is known as a scholar in Maqasid Sharia, but before he contributed his book Muwafaqat. He started the reform by Ihtisam Al-I'tisam is a book related to reform of Aqidah. And there are also other scholars, classical scholars, that we can find, and we can find now many research done by many PhD theses in all over the world, in many languages, that are really open our eyes to benefit from these classical works, that really we can understand comprehensively the process of integration of knowledge, and how the Tawheed is the main pillar that all these scholars put it as, or give it the priority in all the works. Even in our speciality as fuqaha and usuliyin, we find the Shafi'i and we find other usuliyin started with al-Tawheed, So this is what I want to add to what we have learned today from our dear professor. And thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Prof. So I think Prof. Al-Musawi will respond now. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, dear friends and dear colleagues, for your engagement and observations. For the issue of a human consciousness, I think human consciousness in the Islamic perspective is comprehensive, because the Quran calls you to look at your body. It speaks to us about the different stages that the embryo goes through. It talks to us about ثم جعلناه خلقا آخر. It talks to us about our eyes, about our sama, about, so actually the issue of consciousness in this is not just the spiritual, the mental, the internal, say, the batin. It's about the whole being, because we are not human beings by just our mind, nor by our biology. We are humans by our totality, what Malik bin Nabi calls the total man. And what the scholars previously, that's why you cannot do prayers, you cannot do whatever, if your health is not good, your eyes are not good, your food is not good. So we are, by the very virtue of our creation, we have this holistic, comprehensive, and therefore, if one denies his or her biological aspects, he's actually denying his concrete existence. You don't exist. You are not a mental entity. You are a concrete physical entity in the world. And you act through material organs. And therefore, when we don't realize that, it means we are not actually realize who we are. Because our mind and psychology is embedded in this bodily structure, physical structure. Therefore, I don't, and actually this is the problem of Descartes, when he came up with this dichotomy between body and mind. No, in Islam we don't have that. That's why it is said in the hadith Qudsi, العبد بناء الرب ملعون من هدمه. لهدم الكعبة أهون على الله من قتل. So قتل نفس, you just don't kill just the mind. You destroy the whole. So that's why it's, when we talk about the sanctity of life and the human dignity, we understand it in this comprehensive sense. And therefore, Islam raises human consciousness and awareness in this total or comprehensive manner. So there is no renunciation of the body, because the body is the vehicle through which we act, through which our mind, our intellect manifests itself in the different acts we carry out. So I don't see a problem between consciousness. Consciousness is actually embedded in us. We don't live separate entities. We live in one entity. But this entity is multi-dimensional. That's my understanding. I hope I have responded properly to Professor concern. Oh, now the issue, we have the other day a discussion about this with your neighbor, our great Sheikh there, about this issue. Of course, yes, you are right to lament, and all of us may lament, may be sad because of what happens to Muslims throughout. But we need to remember that Muslims have been the most targeted community by imperialistic colonist powers in the world. From the early colonizers, the Portuguese, the British, the French, the German, whatever, the Italian, to their inheritors, the imperialist USA. And let me tell you, it's not just to say that it's not a matter of being West versus East or Muslim versus. I can refer you to this great economist, professor at Columbia University, Jeffrey Sachs. He's a very outspoken and critique of the establishment in the US, and his long years of experience. He was saying that most of the trouble that has happened to the world of today and over the last 2 centuries, he said, emanated from Britain. Who were the first people to invade the Indian, the original population of the New World and exterminated them? They came mainly from Britain, and then they were followed by other people. And this continued. Who did what happened to the Aborigines of Australia and New Zealand? One of the activists in a few years back in Australia, he was asked on the BBC, what have you learned, what has Britain taught you when the white supremacist people came in? He said, we were living together as a community, helping each other, taking care of one another. But when they came in, they taught us 3 things. First, they taught us how to be drunk, how to drink, just alcohol. The second, they taught us to love money. Instead of loving each other, we started loving money. And he mentioned something else I cannot mention. So whatever, this is a problem. A few years back, I was having a discussion with a Japanese scholar by Nakamura, I cannot remember the other name. He is an expert in Islamic thought, and especially on Al-Ghazali, and he translated some works of Al-Ghazali. So I was asking him, sir, what is the problem? You, although you, at some time they were calling you the yellow peril, Japan, as of course, and so this applied to China, the Asian peril, the Asian threat. But now after that, yes, you bombarded whatever American bases, and they subdued you by New Horish. But they allowed you to prosper, to become advanced technologically and scientifically. And although the contact with the West and the Muslims started almost at the same period, in the mid-19th century. The first group of students were sent by Muhammad Ali Pasha in Egypt to study and become experts in different fields was in the 19th century. And after that, the Ottoman Empire, they came. So he told me, they allowed us to prosper, but they did not allow Muslims to prosper, because for us as Japanese, actually this is his words, we don't have a universal message to convey to the world. But Muslims, whether they are Arabs or others, they have a universal message. They feel driven by this message to propagate it, to spread it to the world. And he said that because the West, Europe, the civilizing mission, actually the colonialism was couched in the term, or the concept of civilizing mission. So all the rest of the world are barbaric, are primitive, are and therefore we have come to develop them, to civilize them. So he said that because Islam was a universal civilization for centuries, and even Europe itself depended on the scientific and intellectual achievements and continued the course of history. So he said, they said that you are their immediate competitor, Islamic civilization. So if Muslims become strong, become more advanced, become independent in this and that, so it means that they are going to outdo or outpass the Western civilization. It is that they make sure that you are always under the feet. They don't, so it is, actually, I can see this happening in different forms. But of course, sometimes they allow you to do something because they want to play the balance of power, the regional and geopolitics. So there is actually this, if we forget about the 300 or 400 years of colonialism and think that it is already over, I think we are mistaken. This is still going on. And that's why when Turkey advanced under the leadership of Erdogan and make very important achievements in industry, etc., and economics, they started raising the issue that, oh, the Turks are coming, the Ottomans are coming, the danger is coming. And then they talk about the Islamic threat, the Islamic peril, no more because there was a way to come to kind of negotiation. But because these people have a mission, have a universal mission, therefore we have to make sure that they are under control. My response to Prof. Ghalia is that actually I was not concerned about the previous thing, because I wanted to see in the context of the later developments as they used to be taught by Prof. Abdul Khaliq Qadi, the later developments of Islamic thought, in the context of our encounter with the West. Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah and others, they were doing it within the context of Islamic civilization. Civilization was there. And therefore, they were thinking from the Quranic Islamic worldview. Islamic worldview were the dominating system. But from the 19th century at least, or late 18th century, we started being penetrated, infiltrated, actually disturbed, or actually dismantled. Our framework was dismantled. And therefore, we started having two kinds of elites, two kinds of institutions, traditional education, modern education. And it is within this context, to my understanding, that the issue of worldview, of comprehensiveness, of shumul, of epistemology arose as a crucial matter to be addressed by contemporary scholars. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Misawi. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, we will conclude the Q&A sessions here. Definitely, we can ask Professor Misawi and share our thoughts and reflections on campus, as he is always available here, inshallah. Thank you very much for your valuable questions and thoughtful engagement. On behalf of AHASK RKHS, we wish to recall our sincere appreciation to our Honorable Professor Al-Misawi for his gracious presence and for sharing his invaluable insights with us today. Now, I would like to invite Professor Al-Misawi to kindly return to his seat. Yes, thank you. Over the 4 days, this Congress has successfully hosted the presentation of 69 academic research papers across multiple disciplines, all converging under the unifying framework of Tawhidic epistemology. The resolution to be presented today in the collective outcome of these scholarly deliberations, capturing the essence of our discussions and the way forward for academic application and civilizational impact. I now have the pleasure to call upon the Congress Chairperson, Dr. Rabiatul Adawiya bint Muhammad Saleh, Head of Responsible Research and Innovation, to present the resolution of the Tawhidic Epistemology Congress 2025. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak wa hubba ma yuhibbuk wa hubba amalin yuqarribuna ila hubbik. So thank you so much, Dr. Muhyiddin, our MC for the event today, and also the opening ceremony is very helpful. So I would like to acknowledge first my boss, Associate Professor Dr. Tunku Moha, Deputy Dean of Postgraduate Research and Innovation AHASK KKHS. Of course, our dear keynote speaker, Prof. Dr. Muhammad Al-Tahir Al-Masawi, who is also my co-author. I'm flexing now, I'm bragging. He's my co-author for the TE project, and also I would say my mentor, academic mentor and life mentor. The part life mentor, I have self-proclaimed. All right, he doesn't know. I suddenly, you're my life mentor now. All right, okay. So Alhamdulillah, by the mercy of Allah, we have finally, Alhamdulillah, so much reached the end of such an enriching week of scholarship. So first and foremost, I would like to congratulate the departments and the presenters for participating in this event. Alhamdulillah. All right, so I will not take so much time, though I always say this in my class. I actually scam the students. I say I would not take my time, and finally at the end of the session. All right, so I believe it would not do justice to simply summarize if I want to, for the sake of time. I just feel like I will not summarize the whole thing, but I will go session by session. A simple summary session by session, then we go with the overall resolution of the Congress, okay? So session 1, English language and literature, and this session shows how Tawhidic epistemology is used to study language, literature, and media from an Islamic viewpoint. So it explores how divine thought shapes Arabic grammar, how to better translate Islamic terms, how to analyze texts like the novel Love in a Headscarf and English poetry using Quranic principles. The session also addresses broader issues like decolonizing multilingualism, lessons on fatherhood from the Quran, and the portrayal of Muslim women from Western media like the Time magazine. And sessions 2, psychology. This session reintegrates the soul into psychology by applying a Tawhidic framework. This is explored through analysis of Surah Al-Fatiha, Quranic perspectives on mental health and human cognition. This approach is then applied to practical areas like prison rehabilitation, psycho-spiritual healing, adolescent sexual health, and Islamic parenting from Surah Luqman, while also addressing workplace spirituality and environmental attitudes. All right. Session 3, Quran and Sunnah, RQQS and FITS. This session establishes the Quran and Sunnah as the foundational source of knowledge. So it grounds practical applications like permaculture and the study of human-environment interactions in Tawheed, while also defining core ideas like the concept of man and the philosophy of knowledge. The session also derives moral and epistemic lessons from the story of Musa and Al-Khidir, a study of forgiveness, and an analysis of social harmony and moral excellence, concluding with a study on the scholar Zhang Zong, right? Session 4, History and Civilization. This session re-evaluates history through an Islamic lens, using insights from Hadith scholarship to inform historical methods. So it covers diverse historical topics, including Islamic humanism in the Malay world, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam idea of the city, the bureaucratization of Islam under British rule, and Islam in the post-communist Balkans. The discussion also includes intellectual histories on Mazhabiyah in Southeast Asia and 20th century Quranic exegesis, right? Session 5 from Dal and Com. This session formulates Islamic ethical communication based on foundational principles from the Quran and Sunnah. This ethical framework is then applied to modern communication, challenges including Islamic journalism, AI ethics, integrated marketing communication, IMC, and media ethics. The discussion also explores its relevance to privacy and cultural forms like literature and traditional proverbs. All right, so session 6, Sociology and Anthropology, SOCA, sorry. In this session, Tawhidic epistemology serves as a framework for analyzing sociological challenges. So it examines social institutions through studies on family trust and feminist viewpoints of motherhood. The framework is applied to civilizational concepts like the impact of Tawhid, aesthetics in literature, and Hamka's view on progress. It also addresses contemporary issues such as deviance on social media, future readiness, the debate on historicism, and the application of Quranic verses to the Lanoh, the Orang Asal community, Orang Asli community, right? So this session was also when the Tunku Ampuan Pahang make a surprise and join us, Alhamdulillah. All right, so session 7, Political Science and also Usuluddin. This session articulates a Tawhidic paradigm for ethical governance and political thought. It discusses core governance principles like the unity of ulama and umara, the question of the Islamic State, and solutions for governance fragmentation, as well as discussions on the thought of Al-Ghazali and Taha Jabir Al-Alwani. This paradigm is then applied to societal and global issues, including the anthropology of faith, perceptions of non-Muslims, mental well-being via qadar, and navigating Islamophobia. So the last session, integrated summary for this session demonstrates the relevance of Islamic jurisprudence fiqh to modern complexities. The session applies fiqh to large-scale frameworks for socio-economic justice and economic sustainability. It also clarifies foundational concepts like the meaning of ummah, the history of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah in Perak, the unity of the ummah, and contrast secular with Tawhidic education. So that's the integrated summaries of each session. So now, what is the overall Congress resolution? So I come up with 4. Number 1, to champion a unifying epistemology. All right. So we affirm our from this Congress. What we can say is that from all the presentations we have seen, we affirm our commitment to Tawhidic epistemology as the primary intellectual framework for our scholarly work. We recognize it not as a narrow field, but as a total vision of knowledge that provides the principles of unity, hierarchy, and justice necessary to overcome the fragmentation of modern thought and restore purpose to the pursuit of truth. Right? So that's number 1. Number 2, to pursue active integration, we commit to advancing the integrations of revealed knowledge and the human sciences. We will work across disciplines to allow the foundational principles of Islamic revealed knowledge to inform and guide research in the human sciences, thereby providing ethical and practical solutions to pressing ummatic-driven issues. Right? So number 3, to address contemporary and future challenges. We dedicate our scholarly pursuits to applying the TE framework to address the most urgent challenges of our time, including environmental degradation, mental health crisis, social injustice, and ethical governance. So in line with the function of Tawhidic epistemology to shape a Tawhidic mind, we will strive to develop conceptual frameworks capable of harmonizing natural and artificial intelligence and promoting unity in diversity in an increasingly complex world. So the last one, to develop a spiritually grounded research culture. So we resolve to nurture a vibrant, cross-disciplinary research culture that is both intellectually rigorous and, of course, spiritually grounded, right? So this involves not only producing high-quality academic work, but also ensuring our scholarship remains rooted in the consciousness of Allah, aiming for the advancement of the Ummah rather than mere personal or institutional gain. Right? So with that, I end the Congress of Resolutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rabia, for presenting the integrated summaries and the Congress resolution. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with the resolution of the Congress now presented, it is fitting that we conclude with the words of reflection and guidance from the leadership of the Kulliyah. It is now my honor to invite the Deputy Dean of Postgraduate Responsible Research and Innovation, Associate Professor Dr. Tunku Moha bin Tunku Muhammad Mukhtar, to deliver his closing remarks. Please welcome, Prof.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the dispenser of grace. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I would like to convey the salam from our Dean, Prof. Dr. Hafiz Zakaria, who apologized to all of you for not being able to join the closing ceremony of this Congress due to his Umrah plan later in the day. We wish him Umrah Maqboolah. I don't intend to speak long, so before I end my speech, by thanking everyone involved in the Congress, let me share my observations and key takeaways from this Congress. Firstly, we are doing this not to please the Rector, Prof. Emeritus Dato Dr. Osman Bakar. He emphasized the importance of Tawhidic epistemology in our academic pursuit. We view this as a reminder to strengthen our intellectual roots. We see Tawhidic epistemology as the prerequisite for Islamization of knowledge, and the latter is embedded in our university's philosophy, vision, and mission. Or to sound more intelligent, like Dr. Helmi said, our raison d'être. Secondly, this Congress reflects the whole Kulliyah's effort. There was a misunderstanding that the structure of the Congress is compartmentalized, that it is department-based. In planning for the Congress, Dr. Ruby, Dr. Rabiatul Adawiyah, has ruled out concurrent sessions and opted rather for sessions where interested participants can attend sessions that interest them and not having to choose only one from the multiple concurrent sessions. Okay. And in the meantime, we also did not make this compulsory for everyone, okay, because we understand that we all have our different academic duties. So probably the misunderstanding arose from the involvement of departments in separate sessions, but from the perspective of the organizer, this is to get involvement of all 11 departments in this inaugural Congress. Thirdly, we have to admit that the Tawhidic Epistemology book project may not be in the form it was originally envisaged. We will not be able, okay, I have to admit, to produce 40 books with 10 chapters each. However, we believe that we can produce those books, maybe about 10, more or less, and our emphasis will be on quality books comprising quality chapters. More importantly, we hope that these books can be the impetus for lively discussions on Tawhidic epistemology in the university and beyond, and could be the catalyst for applying Tawhidic epistemology in our curricula and academic pursuit. Fourth, and my last point, on the next step. I think I don't have to read the next step because Dr. Ruby will remind everyone on a daily basis. But of course, the first draft is due on the 26th of September this year. The drafts will then be sent to the editors. Final draft will be on the 31st of October 2025, and then this will be sent for peer review in November. After review, authors will submit the revised chapters by 20th of December. Okay, and if everything goes well, inshallah, the final draft of the books will be sent to the publishers. There is a small budget for this book project, and we will work around this budget to get the best deal for the book, inshallah. So just as a small reminder, from the perspective of the editors, we appeal that the authors in this project abide by the guidelines. For example, 5,000 words, okay, for each of the chapter. Listening to the presentation, sometimes I was afraid that, okay, that chapter can be the whole book by itself. Okay, so please reduce it, and we can, of course, proceed, okay, with the larger, grander book project later on. Okay. So finally, a list of thank you. We would like to record our utmost appreciation to Prof. Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman and the previous Kuliah administrators, Dr. Aslina is here, for initiating this book project on Tawhidic epistemology. We'd like to thank the organizing committee led by Dr. Ruby, comprising of academic, administrative staff, and also our student volunteers. Okay, I think we thank them very much for making this event a success. Also including the media team, okay, a big thank you. Many handsome and pretty pictures every day. We also thank the presenters for sharing their works with the audience. We hope the feedbacks that you got during the sessions will help improve the quality of your chapters. We record also appreciation to all departments in the Kuliah for assistance in covering the sessions, in convening the sessions in the Congress. We also thank the audience for your participation throughout the Congress. A few, I think I can mention, for example, Prof. Dato' Baharudin, Dr. Razak, Dr. Omar, has been here throughout, okay, all the sessions. And also, finally, a special mention to the constitutional head, Tengku Aziza Amina Maimuna, who graced the Congress by a presence on Wednesday. Okay, and she was also actively participating, okay, in the discussion. And to the keynote speakers, our rector, and to Prof. Dr. Muhammad Al-Tahir Al-Musawi. From the bottom of our heart, thank you very much. Okay, let us now all officially declare the Tawhidic Epistemology Congress 2025 closed. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Tunku Moha, for those thoughtful and inspiring remarks. And now, I would like to call upon Associate Professor Dr. Tunku Moha to come forward for the presentation of a token of appreciation to our distinguished keynote speaker. It is with great pleasure that I invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Al-Tahir Al-Musawi to kindly come forward and receive this token of appreciation. Thank you, Professor Musawi. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Tunku Moha. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now take a moment to relive and reflect on the journey of the past 4 days through a short video montage, capturing the highlights, memorable moments, and key milestones of the Tawhidic Epistemology Congress. Please direct your attention to the screen. Thank you for that beautiful and wonderful, insightful presentation, and thank you to the committee members. And Alhamdulillah, the video has reminded us of the remarkable journey of the past 4 days, and the ideas and insights shared and friendships built and the inspiration gained. So ladies and gentlemen, as this closing ceremony comes to an end, we reflect with gratitude upon the efforts and insights and spirit of collaboration that have marked this Congress. On behalf of AHASKE RKHS and the organizing committee, we express our deepest appreciation to our Honorable Rector, our keynote speaker, and University Management Committee members, beloved Dean, Congress Chairperson, Deputy Deans, heads of the departments, coordinators, distinguished scholars, and all participants for your invaluable contributions. We also seek your forgiveness for any shortcomings throughout the conference. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the knowledge shared here, make it beneficial for the Ummah and humanity, and grant us success in translating ideas into practice. With that, we officially conclude this Congress 2025 with the recitation of Tasbih al-Kafara and Surah Al-Asr. Bismillah. Al-Asr. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك. Amin Ya Rabbal Alameen. We now invite our guests and members to proceed to the center for a photography session, please. Oh.